So I think at 47, it's pretty awesome. But I'd like to introduce Earl King. He is the owner of Defensive Applications, and his passions is to and more.
This little you don't have to stare at it. Okay. You can turn talk to us, but I'll put it on there.
You'll watch.
Put it on YouTube.
Okay, all right.
Did she tell you we're going worldwide before?
Now,
Wait for a million people.
ready, three-person groups. Awesome. 30, 3. I'm probably the 23 because I've been here a couple of times. So I really appreciate you guys letting me speak to you this morning. When you're in law enforcement for 30 years, you take a lot of victim reports, and eventually you start seeing that if people had changed, when it's an assault or it's a violent attack, if people had changed one or two things, if they had been a little more aware, if they had trust their instincts and their intuition, then that situation probably could have been avoided or prevented, and I would have been taking a victor report instead of a victim report, right? And then when you get involved in dignitary protection and either protecting people or teaching people how to protect the Secretary of Defense and our top people at the Pentagon, you realize that those same tactics and techniques that we use to protect our top people in the military could be used in people's everyday lives. And that's why I teach the courses that I do to everybody and want to make people safer. We want to make our community safer. We want to make families safer. And we can use those same things that I've learned over the course of my career to help people in their everyday lives to do the same thing. So that's why we teach the courses that we teach. And that's why we're really passionate about teaching those. And Layla helps me teach them as well, because she found out, working in healthcare, that when people came in that were violent and upset and emotionally disturbed, that she needed those skills sometimes as well, and taught those skills to her people that were facing people coming in on the worst day of their life and those times. So that's why we're really passionate about teaching those courses. But I would like to talk to you today about 3 myths about personal protection and self-defense that are out there, and maybe give you a different perspective on some of those things. So the first myth that we always run into is that it takes a long time to learn how to defend yourself. People think that you have to go to a martial arts school for a long time, or you have to have some special government secret training, or that there's some magic move out there that you can learn in Nepal from Buddhist monks, or things like that. And that's just things from movies, and that's where we get most of our ideas, because we still live in for the most part, a civilized society that we don't see violence every day, right? So we get our information from movies and choreographed fights and from the news and how they want to portray what violence looks like and those kind of things. And oftentimes that's not really how it really happens or how it really goes down. But people from that get the idea that you have to train every day, and you have to train for years and years in order to be able to defend yourself. And we found that that's just not the case. We teach a 1-day, 8-hour seminar that you come out of there safer than you were before. We had a father and his daughter that came to our course one time, and we were actually, we asked everybody, hey, why did you come to the course? Why do you want to train? And he came there with his daughter, and he said, in 2 weeks, my daughter is going to Europe for a work study program for college, and I wanted her to be safe. She was 18 at the time, and he was like, I just don't want her going over there with nothing. And he said he went to a couple of martial arts schools, and they were like, well, you should have come to us. If you had come to us 10 years ago, we could have got her where she needed to be to defend herself. And that's just not the right answer. You don't tell somebody, well, I'm sorry you got attacked or killed because you should have started earlier, and we can't make you safer now, you know, so just because they can't do it doesn't mean that with the psychology and the learning tools that we employ in that short amount of time, that you can't come out of this safer knowing how to defend yourself. So I wasn't going to tell that young lady that, well, I guess you're just out of luck because you didn't start when you were 6, you know. We can make people safer in a day, and we've really refined down how to do that. And so it's a very efficient course. It's like a CPR course. You know, when you come out of a CPR course, you're not a doctor, right? You're not going to perform surgery on people. So we're not going to make you an MMA fighter in our 8-hour class. But what you do come out of there with is the necessary skills to save somebody's life in an emergency. Except in this case, it's your own life or your family's lives. So that's why we teach the way we do, and we do the 8-hour classes, because that's an investment that people can make without having to dedicate years of time to learn how to defend themselves, right? Because you could have an incident leaving here today or tomorrow where you need those skills, right? So we want to be able to teach you quickly and make it something you can use. The reason that you can learn it so quickly is that you already know how to fight. You already know how to defend yourself. You just may not know that you know, right? So from our study of physiology and things like that, we've learned that you have inside yourself that mechanism that when danger is presented, when a threat's presented, you know how to react to it, right? You know how to push away danger. You know how to get those hands up to defend your head. It's not something you have to think about. You're a little, without getting into too much neuroscience on it, you have a little dinosaur brain inside you that when a threat's presented, it just automatically goes off, right? And it knows how to protect you. And it's the strongest, fastest thing you can do as a human being. So we teach you that, and we teach you how to enhance that and get to your thinking brain as quick as you can to make good decisions when you're under stress. That kind of stuff helps you in your everyday life too, with dealing with stress and fear and things like that. But that's why we can do that in such a short period of time, because we're using the skills that you already have to protect yourself, and we just show people how to enhance that and to use it in their everyday life. We talk about when we talk about the self-defense part of it, the question always comes up, and that's another myth that I want to address, is that, well, that's why I carry, especially here in Missouri, that's why I carry a gun. I'm just going to use my gun. If somebody threatens me, I'm going to use my gun to defend myself, right? There's a lot of considerations that go into carrying a firearm, using a firearm every day. And don't get me wrong, I'm a big, I'm originally from Texas, so it's kind of in my blood that the Second Amendment, is I'm all for it, right? And people should be able to defend themselves and carry a firearm. That's all great. But when you do that, that's a big responsibility. And you need to understand that when a violent encounter happens, it is very rare that the opportunity is presented where you can use that gun in an appropriate manner. Even if you're training with it all the time and you're good with it, there may not be time to shoot, right? It may happen so fast that you can't even get the gun out. And that's usually how it goes down. So most of these incidents, when it's a violent attack, are over in 3 to 5 seconds, right? One way or the other. So there may not be time to shoot. There may not be room to shoot, right? It may happen so close to you that you don't have time to get that gun out and do that. Or it may not be morally, ethically, legally the right thing to do at the time, right? If there's other people around that could be hurt by it, bullets go through people and those kind of things. So it may not be your intended target to do that, right? So by all means, if you train with it and you're comfortable with carrying a gun, that's great. But the opportunity to use that compared to the opportunities where you might have to defend yourself and your family with other things and in other ways, those opportunities are and those events happen so much more than the opportunity to use your gun. So if you're just relying on a gun for all of your safety and the safety of your family, that's probably not the best plan of action, right? So I'd like for you to think about that a little bit differently. And then the third myth that we talk about in our classes, and I really want you guys to think about as well, is that you may not be strong enough, fast enough, athletic enough, mean enough to defend yourself in a fight, right? And that comes up quite a bit. People that we train, because we have specific courses for nurses, for real estate agents, for people that may not have ever been exposed to violence before, right? We teach teenagers, we have college students come to our classes, things like that. So, we can teach you the psychology of how to get into the fight and defend yourself if necessary, right? And that comes down to, what are you fighting for, right? What is your personal directive that you want to survive this incident? Why are you want to keep on living, and why do you want to defend yourself or your family? Once people realize that, then they get empowered to actually do something about the incident that's occurring to them. We had a lady come to us for training. She originally came to us because her father had dementia, and every once in a while he would kind of lose it a little bit, and he'd try to swing at her or hurt her while she was visiting him and those kind of things. She didn't want to, we weren't going to teach her boxing combinations to use on her death. So she wanted to be able to defend herself and not to hurt, but she really didn't want to hurt him either. So we were training her how to do that. And she came to our one day seminar, and then about 2 weeks after that, she called me and she said, "Hey, I never told you this, but my son is a drug dealer in the area where we live, and last night he broke into my house with one of his buddies, and he was, like 20 years old. And they had masks on, like she wouldn't know that it was. He knew that she had a gun in her bedroom and had some money in there, so he was trying to break in to get the money and the gun, and he brought a friend with him, and they were just going to run her over, and get this out of her apartment. And she's a little tiny. She was a college professor. She goes around the world testing for safe water for people in villages and things like that. So she was coming to us because she was out on her own doing that kind of stuff too, and wanted some training. But she's telling me about this incident, and she said, so I jumped up and I did what you told me. I let my natural reactions take over, and I hit my son first, and he fell over the coffee table and he fell into his buddy. And then I just started doing that knee thing that you taught me, and just started kneeing them. And they both were like, "Stop it," and they were falling over each other, and they got up and they ran out. And she said, "But I did it right." And I'm like, "Wait a minute, back up." So you're telling me that you were sitting all nice and calm in your living room watching TV. You had a home invasion with two 20-year-olds that were bigger and stronger than you were, and you made them flee in self-defense. And you don't think you did it right. I'm pretty sure you did it right. Whatever you did it right. So after that, she was like way more confident. She's like, "Yeah, I guess I did it right." So we don't teach any particular techniques. We teach a system that will get you through that critical incident that you might have in your life, right? We had another lady with one of the real estate agent classes that we were teaching down in Springfield. And while we were talking about fear management and how to control that fear in a violent encounter, she said, "I just don't think that I could possibly ever fight through getting shot. I'm not a soldier. I don't have a military background. I've never had any training in this. I don't think I could fight through getting shot or stabbed." And so I asked her, I was like, "Do you have kids?" And she's like, "Yeah, I've got 3 kids." I was like, "Well, natural childbirth hurts a lot more than getting shot or stabbed. You endure that, that's pretty awesome. So I think if you take the pain of it, so what is it that you don't think you can do?" And she's like, "I just don't think, seeing that I was injured like that, I could fight through it." And I said, "Well, and this has to do with, what are you fighting for? And what would it cost you if you don't fight?" Right. So I asked her, I said, "So you come home one day to your house and you see your door is slightly ajar. And you're like, oh, the kids left the door open again. You got grocery bags in your hand. You go in and you see in your living room, there's your child, and they're tied up and they're in the corner. And over here on this side of the room, you see there's the dude from Silence of the Lambs, right?" I'm just glad you guys get the movie reference, because most of my students are like in their 20s and they're like, "What's that talking about?" And so anyway, he's standing in the corner and he's dancing around in his robe, and he's about to come at your kid to do bad things to him. What would you do in that situation? And he's got a knife, and he's coming at, and she's like, "Oh, I would rip it." She used some language there, and now she's Chuck Norris or John Wick, and she's like, "Rip his arms off, rip his head off." you got into a bloody pulp. And I'm like, well, okay, so a few minutes ago, you didn't think you could survive being shot or stabbed, and now you're John Wick or Chuck Norris. You know, how did that transition happen? She's like, well, it's my child. Like, exactly. Right. So what do you see yourself doing to defend somebody else that you don't see yourself doing to defend yourself? Because what would it cost you if you don't fight back? You know, who's going to protect your family after that if you don't endure that situation and survive that situation? So we do a lot of psychological motivation in our classes because, you know, all movement is mental. And if I can't access the mental part of what am I fighting for, how do I fight through this, then I'm not going to be able to move, even though I have training to do that, right? I can't access those tools if I can't get to that part of my brain that's going to motivate me to do something about it. So we really try to inspire people through our training. We really try to approach self-defense differently because we talk about what happens before that, right? And that's where the dignitary protection part of that comes in, because we want you to be able to use those skills in your own life. You know, making places, you know, for when we're protecting the Secretary of Defense, we make those places secure before they ever go there, right? You can do that with your own home. You can do that with the route that you take to work every day. You can do that at your place of business. Just thinking about if I was a bad guy, how would I attack me? You know, going from that perspective, just making that transition in your head makes you safer, right? So just for the things that I'm presenting to you today and you thinking that way, it's going to make you safer in your own life. Because it's really simple. You know, these people that are going to attack you in your everyday life that pose a threat to you are not Bond villains. You know, they're not evil geniuses that can come up with some brilliant plan to defeat you. You know, it's pretty simple. Bad guys want, you know, it's my experience that most of the time bad guys want three things. They want your property, your body, or your life, right? And once you know that, you can start developing strategies to defeat that, right? To take that away from them and make it hard for them to get those things. And then, you know, there's three things they don't want. They don't want to get hurt, they don't want it to take too long, and they don't want to get caught. So if we can make them think that those three things are going to happen, and we can take away the three things that they want from us and make it hard for them to get, we've defeated 99% of the things that could happen to us, right, from another person. So breaking it down that way, simplifying that for people, making them think about defending themselves and being safer in their own life is what we're all about and what we want to do. So that's our motivation. And we treat it seriously. We have fun in our classes and we laugh and joke, but you know, teaching people to be safer, we take very seriously. I think we have a moral, ethical, legal duty to do that with the knowledge that I've gained and Layla's gained over the years in doing this. And that's why we share it with our community and want to make our community safer. So if you guys have any questions, I'm going to be here for a little while. And
So where are you at? And how long have you been down here?
So we moved to the area about 2 years ago, and I teach at Fort Leonard Wood as my full-time job for the military police school there, and we teach the dignitary protection course there. So we're training soldiers to do Secret Service type work.
Do you have a place up here where people go to? Where do you?
We will just rent a facility for the day. We've used the Realtors Association building up in Eldon for. And we've rented one of the hotel conference rooms and taught our classes there. But we taught at St. Robert, we taught at Springfield. You know, I just got back from teaching the same system to Little Rock PD last week. And so we'll teach military, law enforcement, nurses, doctors, whoever wants the training. So those are profession-specific courses that we do, but we also teach that 8-hour seminar, and we call it Be Your Own Bodyguard, just because of the things I was talking about, right? You can be your own bodyguard.
So that's a great job.
Thank you. Okay. If I have any other questions that they want to, yeah, go ahead.
Protected by and they had
years, a lot of people put that on there. And the deal is, by attacking you, they don't protect you. Up until, about a year ago, I driving downhill, but up until then, I got a crystal on seat. I've got a big one now, I don't have this one there, but that was protection. And people know you're going to protect yourself, much less likely to attack you or.
Right, and we always talk about, making yourself a hard target, right? So if somebody's looking to attack you, you want to kind of have an ADT sign in the yard, but you want to do that in your everyday life, wherever you go to present that, because somebody's not going to break into your house if you have a barking dog and it's well lit, they're going to go on down to the house that's an easy target to break into. It's the same thing with personal protection to do that. The strategy of announcing to everybody that you have a gun in your car may not be the best strategy to do that. But anything that we can do to make yourself a hard target, bad guys are going to go somewhere else and try to do that. So that's a good one.
People would be attacking. They knew you had self-protection there.
Yeah.
And so why we don't advertise that anymore? I don't know.
Yeah, it's probably because of the car theft and the break-ins that people have, so you want to make sure that it's secure in the car. Any other questions?
You were talking about in the idea of the mother kids, you gotta have the vision, you gotta know what you're fighting for. And that's no vision for her. So one of the things that I would envision for people coming to course, if somebody comes in and they're kind of timid, okay, what else can you do to bring them out of that timidness? Because to me, if aggression comes toward me, it's force. Okay, and I don't care how big, how little, how old, or how young they are. To me, that's what it's got. Otherwise, the end result won't lie. So
Yeah.
what else do you do to address the timidness?
So when we're actually doing the physical drills, putting the mental image in their mind of what they're fighting for makes a huge difference. And we've seen that with especially our smaller students and things like that. Size matters in a fight, right? But when you're in the fight, size can't matter, right? If we were in a smash up derby, right, and we were pulling cars out of the hat, and I pull out a Prius and you pull out a Hummer, right? Size matters in that, right? I'm going to get crushed by that Hummer. But if we're going to be in this smash them up derby, whether we like it or not, right? It's a choiceless choice at the point when the fight happens. So I have to develop, it's up to me to develop strategies to defeat that larger vehicle in that smash them up derby, right? It's the same in physical protection. So as a person is doing the drill, if you inspire them to say, okay, your kid is right behind you right now. If that person pushes you back or pushes you over, they're getting to your kid. And you see their entire physiology change, right? Because of what's going on mentally. And I said earlier, all movement is mental, right? And so they access that, all of a sudden they're stronger, all of a sudden they're faster, all of a sudden they're responding to these threats like they mean business, just like you were talking about, and that's how you get them to respond full force and motivate them to do that. Sometimes, and it depends on how, there's several different kinds of adult learning. And it just depends on how you learn. For that auditory and tactile learner, as they're doing it and you put that in their brain, it changes everything, right? Some people can just hear it and they're like, oh yeah, I got it. I'm going to fight like that because of the image that they have. If they're an auditory learner, they just have that image in their head, they're good to go. But for a tactile learner and things like that, then there's those cues as they're doing it that they learn. So we really pay attention to that and coach each individual student according to what they need and how they learn. Thank you.
What's an ideal class size for you? You go with something out in the public here, you can go. So
Yeah.
class is too big or?
In 2017, we taught a class in Beverly Hills, and it was a bunch of Hollywood actors and actresses and stunt people, and they brought their stunt doubles with them to learn safety and stuff like that. And that was a 60-person class. But we have 5 instructors, for that class. So when it's me and Layla, it's usually, we usually try to cap it around 20 people. Just so we can give everybody that individual attention that we're talking about. So that's a pretty good size group. But, because we're so motivated to do this, if one person shows up, we're still going to train and we're still going to teach them. Because that's an opportunity for us to learn as well. And, if we can make one person safer, then we're doing what we want to do. Because it's not about making money for us or, big class sizes or anything like that. We just want to make our community safer and make people safer with what we know.
Talk about dignitary protection. I was a hospital administrator and now we're making the president keeps coming to speak. Weeks in advance to the Secret Service and we have they sanitized us, designated an area and said, this will be off limits for the time Air Force One lands to takes off. This is hell.
Was this after Hinkley or before?
This was the 19th.
Okay.
So they even had a special phone wired in to this and said, the only reason that phone rings is if there's a problem. Okay. So we don't expect that phone to ring. So the day comes to speak. Secret Service are all over the place in the phone. Sorry. One answers the phone, and so some of the staff are their problem goes, oh no, I was just Joe checking to make sure. So
Yeah.
just small preparation
Mhm.
and phone rings.
Yeah. Yeah, it is. And we say that all the time. If it's gonna happen, it'll happen to us on the day, at the time. So. Yeah, but all of that beforehand, securing the scene and that kind of stuff is just awareness, right? It's just aware of what the possible threats are. And like I was talking about with our everyday lives, those threats are pretty simple, right? It's one of 3 things. And so if we can start preparing the scene, whether that's your work or the resident, or the way you take to get there, if we can make those more secure, be more aware of those threats as we're doing our everyday lives. And it's not to make you paranoid, but it actually makes you more confident if you're aware of, okay, these are the things that can actually happen, right? Instead of engines are going to repel out of the helicopter to attack me on my way to work. If you think about realistically, these are things that could actually happen to me and start preparing for those, it actually makes you more relaxed and more confident because you are more aware of what those threats could actually be. Instead of thinking everybody will attack me, it's, hey, I know when it's going to be presented. And we spend a lot of time on pre-contact cues, on the movement that happens, what happens before the attack. We call it the 3 Ds. We detect to avoid the danger in the first place. And if we can't detect it and avoid it, then we try to deter it as much as we can and defuse and de-escalate the situation. And then if we can't de-escalate it, then we defend ourselves when necessary, right? So breaking it down like that, has to do, that's kind of the dignitary protection model of just trying to make yourself more secure wherever you go.
It's interesting in the last kind of points that you were talking about, that I was going to ask you. I know there's the expression, the paranoid spy, but what I was going to ask was, is there any consequences? Like think about, my family, my wife has psychovirus. On the one hand, ignorance splits, so they kind of go through. So after a thing like that, my question is there the unintended consequence of, now all of a sudden they're always like, do people become more wary? They're not at relaxed already. You're saying it gives you extra confidence, but at the same time, does that make you more on edge? Because of that awareness.
Yeah. So when you talk about awareness levels, if you can color code it, like a white awareness level is not knowing anything. I'm totally oblivious to my surroundings. I've got my head in my phone. Those kind of things. I don't know that there's any danger around me at all. That is really when people are the most paranoid and scared, and that's where the fear management that we teach comes into play, is because they're so afraid of those things happening right? That they have the opposite effect of sticking their head in the sand and not wanting to know about all the bad things, right? But knowing about those things and then being able to recognize it ahead of time so they can avoid it really builds that confidence to where it's not a paranoia, it's just an awareness of, hey, there are dangerous things out there. I need to be looking around and aware of that. I take the times when I'm going to look at my phone when, and it's not in a parking lot at Walmart, and those kind of things. So what we found is it actually makes people, and people always call us back and send us emails after the training, and it actually makes them more confident and less paranoid about the things that can happen because they've really dialed into this is a threat and this is so. If you get good at threat discrimination, you can be relaxed in a big crowd because you can scan that crowd and go, okay, I don't see any of those things I was trained to recognize, so we're good here. Which actually makes you more relaxed than to look at, anybody in this crowd could possibly attack me at any time, and there's millions of ways I could die, then that's where the paranoia can come into it. So through that training, we actually see people become more confident and more relaxed because they know that, hey, I'm taking this route to work and it's safe because I've done all the preparation for it to teach people how to do that. Thanks, really good question. Anything else? So if there is anything you would like to talk about, but not with everybody, then we're open to that. Clay has my information, and I've got cards here if anybody has anything later for us. And she'll announce when our next classes are. If anybody has family members or wants to come to the training. Thank you for your time. Appreciate it. Oh.
Then you're on.